Obsessed is a strong word, and it is the right word. Not in the clinical, pathological sense of a fixation that disrupts functioning or produces compulsive behavior that the person cannot control or interrupt. In the more precise, more psychologically accurate sense of a preoccupation that has settled into the avoidance interior with a persistence and a specificity that their ordinary management strategies cannot reduce to a comfortable background hum. The avoidant who is obsessed with you is not thinking about you constantly in a way they would name obsession. They are simply, continuously, in ways that feel automatic rather than chosen, oriented towards you. The attention returns. The comparison runs. The specific weight of what you represented in their interior has not diminished with time in the way that the management strategy expected it to diminish. The obsession does not look like obsession. The avoidant is not performing the visible, socially legible signs of someone who cannot stop thinking about another person. The performance would require the acknowledgement of the preoccupation, and the acknowledgement of the preoccupation would require the acknowledgement of the investment that produces it. And the acknowledgement of the investment is precisely the thing the avoidance system is most practiced at preventing. The obsession is internal. It is managed against continuous disclosure. It is present in the specific, subtle, behavioral tells of someone who is carrying a significant interior preoccupation while maintaining the surface presentation of someone who has moved through the loss with their characteristic composure intact. These are the tells. They know things about your current life that the current level of contact should not have provided. The avoidant who is no longer significantly preoccupied with you does not maintain active awareness of your current circumstances. Their attention, having processed the loss within the available narrative frameworks and moved forward with the efficiency that the self-sufficiency performance requires, does not continue to allocate resources to the monitoring of your life's progression. You become, in their attentional economy, the category of past connection, present in memory, but not in the ongoing, active, resource-consuming awareness of someone whose current situation is being tracked. The avoidant who is still obsessed with you maintains the tracking without acknowledging the tracking. They know things, not through active surveillance, not through any behavior they would recognize as incompatible with the composed, moved-on presentation they are maintaining, but through the specific, disproportionate attention they bring to the peripheral channels through which information about you moves. The mutual acquaintance whose casual mention of something you are doing is received with more attention than the casual delivery warrants. The social peripheral in which your existence generates signals that the ordinary, moved through the lost person would not be monitoring with the specific, sustained, entirely involuntary attention that preoccupation allocates. When the avoidant knows the specific quality of your current life, the direction it is moving, the changes it has undergone, the texture of where you are, with an accuracy that the acknowledged level of contact does not explain, the awareness is the evidence. The knowing is not incidental. It is the automatic, non-chosen, preoccupation-driven product of an interior that has not processed you into the past tense with the efficiency that the surface presentation suggests. They reference you in contexts where your absence would be easier. The obsessed avoidant mentions you, not in contexts where your mention is called for, not when directly asked about past connections or when the conversation has arrived at a subject area where your name is the relevant content, but in the other contexts, the ones where your name does not need to appear for the conversation to proceed adequately, the ones where your inclusion requires the speaker to have been thinking about you in a context unrelated to the current conversation. The ones where the reference, however briefly and however casually delivered, reveals the background presence of a person who is occupying the avoidance interior in a way that keeps surfacing into expression despite the absence of any conversational requirement for it. These references are not deliberate disclosures. The avoidant is not making a strategic decision to mention you. The mention escapes through the specific, telltale gap between the management's intention and its execution that opens when the preoccupation has enough presence to push through before the management can intercept it. The reference arrives in the conversation before the avoidant has had time to calculate whether the reference reveals more investment than they want to reveal. And in the immediate aftermath, sometimes visible, sometimes only felt, the management re-engages. The casual reframing, the slight withdrawal of the reference's significance, the composed continuation that works to establish the mention as incidental rather than as the surface expression of something larger that lives underneath it. The reframing is the confirmation. Incidental mentions do not require reframing. Only the mentions that revealed something requiring management need to be managed after the fact. Their response to information about you is disproportionate to the acknowledged relationship. The avoidant who has genuinely processed the loss and moved forward receives information about you with the equanimity of someone for whom you are a past connection, acknowledged, perhaps even remembered with some warmth, but not occupying sufficient current interior real estate to generate a response that exceeds what the acknowledged relationship warrants. The obsessed avoidance response exceeds the acknowledged relationship's warrant, not dramatically, not in the visible, unmanaged way of someone whose investment is obvious, but observably to anyone paying the kind of attention that the avoidance management is designed to prevent people from paying. The specific quality of alertness that arrives when your name appears in conversation, the particular stillness, not calm, but the controlled stillness of someone who is actively managing an internal response that characterizes the receipt of significant information about you. The quality of the questions that follow a mention of you that are a fraction too specific, a fraction too interested, a fraction too invested in the detail to be the casual questions of someone for whom you are simply a past connection. The disproportionality is the signal. Every response is calibrated against a baseline, what this level of acknowledged connection would warrant. When the response exceeds the warrant, the excess is evidence of what the management is working to conceal. The interior investment that has not been reduced to the level the surface presentation claims. They avoid certain subjects or spaces that carry your association. The avoidant, who has genuinely moved past the preoccupation, does not need to avoid the things associated with you. The association, present in memory, does not carry enough current charge to require active avoidance. The place you used to go together can be visited without significant interior disruption. The subject areas that were yours together can be engaged without the engagement activating the preoccupation in a way that requires management. The past connection is past, and the pastness is genuine, and the genuine pastness means the associated landscape does not carry current threat. The obsessed avoidant avoids, not always explicitly, not the dramatic, announced avoidance of someone who is visibly organized around the management of your association. The quieter, more deniable, more easily attributed to coincidence avoidance of someone who simply, somehow, keeps not being in the places and conversations and subject areas where the preoccupation's current charge would make the management most difficult. The avoidance is the inverse of the evidence. The things that are being avoided are precisely the things carrying your most significant associations. And the avoidance of the significant associations is the evidence that the associations are still significant, still carrying enough charge to require management, which they would not require if the preoccupation had genuinely subsided. They engage with your current self, differently than your history warrants. This is the most subtle tell and the most reliable, because it requires comparison, the comparison of the avoidant's current engagement with you against the baseline that the history of the connection would set for someone who had processed the loss in the ordinary way. The avoidant who has moved forward engages with the current version of you with the comfortable, slightly distant warmth of someone who knew a previous version and is receiving the current version as the updated information about a past connection. The engagement is genuine, but appropriately bounded. It does not exceed the warrant of the acknowledged relationship. It does not carry the specific, invisible quality of someone who has been maintaining an ongoing interior relationship with you across the period of no contact. The obsessed avoidant engages with the current version of you with a quality that does not match the official timeline of the relationship. The familiarity is too current. The interest is too specific. The attentiveness to what you have become, to the particular ways you have changed and developed in the period since the distance established itself, is too invested to be the casual curiosity of someone catching up with a past connection. The engagement is continuous with the interior relationship that the obsession has been maintaining. The interior relationship did not pause when the external contact reduced. It continued in the tracking, in the comparing, in the carrying, and the current engagement with the current. You reflects that continuity. The avoidant is not meeting the current you for the first time since the distance established. They are continuing a relationship that, on their side, has been ongoing in the interior throughout the entire period of apparent distance. These tells, taken individually, are deniable. Each one can be explained within a framework that does not require the acknowledgement of the preoccupation that produces them. Taken together in the specific pattern of their accumulation, they are not deniable. They are the evidence of someone whose interior has not completed the processing that the surface presentation claims to represent. The avoidant is still obsessed with you, not because they are weak or broken or incapable of moving forward in the ordinary sense, because you reach something in their interior that their ordinary management cannot neutralize, that their rationalization narratives cannot adequately contain, that their self-sufficiency performance cannot maintain against the accumulated, continuous, entirely genuine presence of someone who mattered in the specific, irreplaceable, this person only way that genuine obsession requires. The obsession is the love that has not found its resolution. The love that is still present, still specific, still carrying your name in the interior, in the tracking, in the tells that the management cannot always catch, as the one that has not been replaced, as the one that, in all the honest accounting of the avoidance interior, has not yet been and may not be replaceable.